boy? I said, well, I thought I'd play with him a little bit. I said, well, that depends what you mean by Yankee. He said, anyone north of Wallace is a Yankee. So I reckon we probably got a couple of Yankees over here today. How good is this? We've got a Yankee. I was born and raised in Connecticut, spent a lot of years in Boston, so I guess I'm sort of a Yankees Yankee, and I'm out here talking about Southern history, so God bless America. It has, as Charlie mentioned earlier, it has been just a treat for me to be able to kind of dig back and start doing some research and talk to the Murphy family and try to find out for my own edification what facts were, what was fiction. I think everyone of us went through the sales process here at Riverland. We were all told a lot of things, and I said, well, now's my time to go back and verify it. About half of what I was told was probably true, and some really neat things. So what I'd like to do is kind of take you on a little bit of a journey from the early days of Mr. Wendell Murphy and what he was all about and how his business began, because it's important to us. If he didn't do what he did back in the early 60s, we wouldn't be sitting in this building right now. Everything that we're here and every reason why we're here has to date back to his success in business. So I'll take you a little bit through those early days, how that business grew. I also put together a timeline for you. I never saw a timeline before, when things opened up, when the businesses began, so I put that together for you. And also we'll kind of finish up going through a little bit of some of the historical aspects, some of our predecessors of this land in particular. Sonny touched on a few things that there might be a bit of overlap, but we'll talk about some of our predecessors on this land and leading up to why River Landing is here and why we named it River Landing and so forth. So along the way, if you do have important questions, by all means feel free to ask them. If not, we'll answer them at the end and go from there. Also, if you can't see this presentation real well, we are going to save it and upload it onto the website. So you'll be able to go back and reference any of the facts or share it with whomever you like. So, to begin, this gentleman on the left over here, I think everyone knows that's Mr. Wendell Murphy. The gentleman to the right, who probably very few people in the room, some people know, that's Mr. Holmes Murphy. That's Mr. Wendell's dad. He was a very important person in the early days of the business. A lot of people don't hear that name, but he was a very important part of that business in the early days. In 1960, this is where it all begins. Wendell Murphy graduates from Penn State University. Go Wolfpack. Any Wolfpack? All right, go Wolfpack. He then goes and begins teaching school. He was an agriculture teacher right down the road here in Newport County. So he starts off as an ag teacher. A year later, he's doing some research. And in his research, he's looking at various aspects of agriculture. He looks at the feed business. And he says, you know, I think there's probably a better way to do this than is being done currently. So in 1961, he decides to go to his dad, Mr. Holmes Murphy, and ask him to co-sign a loan. And the loan is for $13,000. Mr. Holmes Murphy says, yeah, fine, that sounds good, we'll do it. They sign the loan, they begin, and we'll go through the timeline in a moment, but they begin what becomes the first feed mill. 1964 rolls around. The first contract farm was built. At that time, it was free-ranging animals. It's evolved over the years, but in 1964, the first farm was built, and the growth begins. So the question about how long has the pork industry been around in North Carolina, there were certainly folks raising pigs and for many years preceding this. But in 1964 is really the time when first contract farms began, and then the explosion of business from that point forward. Interestingly enough, a lot of the things that I've read back historically about Mr. Wendell Murphy and some of the things he talked about and some of the folks that have been around the business for a long, long time, I've had a distinct pleasure over the past year and a half being able to work with some of these folks and get some of the lessons and tutelage that he's passed down over the years. And what's most interesting is he's really talked about a couple of things since the beginning that are keys to his success. And it's important because these are things that we're actually trying to do right now at River Landing. We know we can do better, but these are things that we're very focused on. The first thing that Mr. Murphy said was he understood that he could make money by doing the inconvenient things. Doing things that other people didn't want to do and working a little bit harder and a little bit smarter. It's a pretty basic principle, but that was something that he talked about then and we talk about now. The second thing, which was really important, and I think we are literally sitting in something that's a testament to it, he had said since the beginning, continues to say today, watch out what you promise, and make sure you always over-deliver or you deliver more than you promised. And I think the building that we're sitting in here today, this was supposed to be a 6,000 square foot building when they began this. So I think this is a testament to the fact that they have always over-delivered expectations. But those are some of the foundation principles began his business with and started growing the operation. So the timeline here and how things all sort of shook up down to current day. 1961, Mr. Murphy gets the loan, begins what's called the register feed mill. That mill is actually still in existence today. And you know what that is? In Howard, correct. Regis Crossroad, correct, absolutely. 1964, the first contract farm. In 1983, this is one thing that some folks don't know. 1983, Mr. Wendell was elected to the North Carolina House of Representatives. Served there for a number of years. In 1988, he was elected to the North Carolina Senate. By 1988 also, Murphy Family Farms was the #1 producer of hogs in America. Quite an amazing feat, starting from something so simple as being an agriculture teacher. 1991, and we're going to talk in more detail about this in a few minutes. 1991, they start planning and talking about Riverland. And there's a really good reason why they have it. Many of us didn't know that, but there's a good reason why they started talking about it. In 91, they start talking about Riverland. In 1993, the development work begins out here. 1994, they begin construction on the river course. And the river course, just so you know, back in that time, our golf courses are constructed amazingly well. This was a raw piece of land, so to come move all the dirt, put all the irrigation in. If you notice on the golf course, we have irrigation in the middle and both sides of the fairway, which is very unique. It's a very expensive golf course, took a long time to construct, but it began in 1994. 1996, June of 1996, was the official grand opening of Riverland. And also in 1996, the first home site sold. And they sold, there was a fair number, mostly to local residents, but also to some of the folks in the swine industry. In 1997, the first homes were completed in Riverland. I can't get two people to say the same thing in terms of which house was first, but I do have a number of homes. These homes up here, we know were to be the first ones. The house that Lawrence and Deanna Parks live in right now in River Ridge, the house that Hares live in, the Hughes home, which is now Wendy Dell Murphy owned it on Pine Ridge. It's sitting vacant currently. Dell's home was also one of the first ones, the Cavender home, and the Crumpler home, which was originally Jerry Godwin's house, who was the CEO of Murphy Family Farms for a number of years. So those were the first homes, and they were built in 1997. 1998, we have the grand opening of the outdoor pool. 1999, Holiday Inn Express opens for business in September. Did anybody stay in Holiday Inn that night? Did you, Dave?
I moved here in July of '99,
Okay.
and we had the flood.
Yep.
And they had just put the cart path in.
Yep.
I live in the Candlewood area, and I went over and said I want to get them because we're getting a hurricane.
Yep.
And then the next day after the hurricane, I went over there and I seen Worth and everybody come out crying. And I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "Oh, the state took over the hotel and all that." But I was lucky because I have 2 handicapped adults now.
Right.
They allowed me to stay in that, so I was probably one of the...
And the hurricane came a few weeks after the opening. So
Yeah,
the
right.
grand opening of the hotel in September of '99, I actually hadn't even stayed in the hotel by night for the first night. It was actually kind of a neat night to stay in a hotel with sheets that had been slept in. It was really pretty cool. It was very clean. So we're in the hotel and we had played a golf tournament. I think it was the first Murphy Open that we played that day. And it rained like crazy that whole day. And we got back and we laid out our golf clubs on the carpet, which they probably didn't appreciate at the time. I would never do now, by the way. And it was sometime after midnight, the alarm goes off. The fire alarm goes off. And so we all stream out, and it's pouring rain, and we all get out to the road. And as the story goes, there was, and I don't think we still call it this today, but at the time, there was a honeymoon suite up on the top floor. And I understand that there were some activities in the tub that caused the tub to overflow. And there we are in the streets in our pajamas. Inglorious beginning of the Holiday Inn Express.
Actually, it was people up there who had 2 dogs. And what happened was they put the dogs in the tub. They had a lot of hair.
A lot better example than we have.
That's what I was told.
We're going to go with the Dave story. That's a good one. So in 2000, this is actually a very important thing. In 2000, prior to that, Murphy Family Farms was developed. They were raising, they were growing hogs. They had a tremendous business. And really, what Mr. Wendell Murphy did with his family was they just developed a better mousetrap. They figured out a better way to raise animals, to get quicker to market, and healthier and so forth. In 2000, the market just prior to that was very, very turbulent. The commodities market was extremely turbulent. In 2000, they made a decision to sell their business to Smithfield Foods. That could be an entirely different historical discussion to begin at another time, but in 2000, they sell the business to Smithfield Foods. In 2001, the Matador opens up for business in November. Now, if you remember when the Matador opened up, that was actually quite a different restaurant back then. It opened up, and before that, there really wasn't a lot of places in Wallace to go for dinner. In fact, prior to that, we'd go to Kenansville, and there was some great restaurants. The Gray Fox, it's Gray Fox, right? Yeah, Gray Fox, great restaurant that shut down. And it's some good restaurants, but you had to go out of town. So the Matador opens up, and the place was just flooded for weeks and weeks on end. But originally, when the Matador opened up, if you remember, it's not set up. It wasn't set up then like it is today. Back then, we walked in the front door to the right-hand side of the River Dancer. It was fine dining, and in the room in the back, it was set up as a wine room, but also an extension of the fine dining restaurant. And there's a bar in there, which is an imported bar, handcrafted. It's probably the nicest bar anywhere in the world. And that room, after that first couple of weeks, literally just had crickets in it. Nobody ever went over there. The other side of the restaurant was set up like it is today. The other side of the restaurant was casual dining, and it was fairly well attended from the beginning. But at some point, a few years later, they said, listen, nobody's going over there. We have this great bar. We need to do something different with that. Instead of making a fine dining, there just wasn't an appetite in the town of Wallace for expensive dining at that time. So they converted to a pub and grill, which was probably the smartest thing they could have done. So the beginnings of the Matador. 2002, a year later, the village store opens up for business in May. 2003, Murphy Family Ventures is formed. You've probably heard that name around a little bit, just so you understand a little bit of the history behind Murphy Family Ventures. Prior to 2003, where we're sitting today, the entire river